When Judge Harold Whitman summoned Claire Bennett to his courtroom that Friday, he believed he had chosen the perfect target, a simple high school literature teacher who had dared to publicly criticize him. He intended to make an example out of her, crush her credibility, and soothe his bruised ego. But as Claire stood quietly in her navy blue cardigan, clutching her notes, Judge Whitman had no idea he was stepping into his own downfall. Earlier that day, Claire tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear as she wrote "Themes of Justice in Modern Literature" across the whiteboard. Her class of seniors watched her, some with genuine interest, others with eyes already drifting toward the clock, eagerly awaiting lunch. It was Claire's 10th year teaching at Riverside High. Despite the typical challenges of adolescence and distractions, she loved her work deeply. "Ms. Bennett," called Jason from the back row, "why do we even need to study symbolism? Can't we just enjoy the stories?" Claire smiled, setting down her marker. "That's a profound question, Jason. Stories are reflections of truth, justice, and the human spirit. If you only glance at the surface, you miss everything beneath." The bell rang, and the students quickly gathered their things. As Claire wiped the board, her eyes caught a copy of the school newspaper on a desk. The bold headline read, "Local Judge's Controversial Decision Diverts School Funding." Claire's expression darkened slightly. She recalled vividly the heated town hall meeting from last month, where she had spoken against Judge Whitman's decision to redirect educational funds to a private luxury development project. Later that afternoon in the teacher's lounge, her colleague Monica nudged her with a smirk. "Heard you made quite a splash at that meeting," Monica teased. Claire chuckled. "I just spoke the truth. Judge Whitman's decision may have been technically legal, but it was ethically wrong. That money belonged to the kids." Monica gave her a wary look. "You sure know how to ruffle the wrong feathers. Whitman's got friends in high places, Claire." Claire shrugged, gathering her papers. "I'm just a literature teacher stating an opinion. What's he going to do? Have me arrested?" What most people at Riverside didn't know was that Claire Bennett hadn't always been a teacher. 15 years earlier, she had graduated with honors from a prestigious law school. Though she never took the bar exam, disillusioned by the adversarial nature of the courtroom, she chose instead to nurture young minds, channeling her passion for justice through literature. That evening, driving home to her modest one-bedroom apartment, Claire thought about her grandfather, a local attorney who had spent his life defending the powerless. His old, worn law books still lined her living room shelves, quiet reminders of a path she had chosen not to walk. Kicking off her shoes, she settled in for a quiet night of grading essays. The blinking light of her answering machine caught her eye. She pressed play. "Ms. Bennett, this is the clerk from the municipal court. You are required to appear regarding a traffic violation. Judge Whitman will be presiding. Please report this Friday at 9 a.m. Claire frowned. Traffic violation? She recalled receiving a minor citation for rolling through a stop sign 3 weeks ago. But she had paid the fine online immediately. There shouldn't be anything to appear for. A small knot of unease tightened in her stomach. "Strange," she muttered, pulling out her laptop to double-check her payment confirmation. Little did Claire know, this was just the beginning of Judge Whitman's carefully crafted trap. The next morning in his grand office lined with mahogany shelves and certificates gleaming in gold frames, Judge Harold Whitman leaned back in his leather chair, reviewing Claire Bennett's file. A thin smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Gerald," he barked at his nervous young clerk, "bring me everything you have on Claire Bennett." "Yes, Your Honor," Gerald replied, scurrying away. He knew that look in the judge's eyes, cold and calculating. He returned minutes later with a slim file. Whitman flipped through it impatiently. "She's been teaching at Riverside High for 10 years. No criminal record, pays her taxes on time, single, no notable affiliations," Gerald summarized. He hesitated. She graduated top of her law school class about 15 years ago. Never took the bar exam, though." Whitman's eyebrows lifted sharply. "A law graduate?" he mused aloud. "Interesting. Knows just enough to be dangerous, but probably too rusty to defend herself properly." He stood, walking to the window and watching the city bustle below. "Gerald," he said without turning, "amend the summons. Change it from the paid citation to a failure to appear notice. Add a contempt charge." Gerald stiffened. Sir, that would be fabricating. Judge Whitman turned, fixing him with a hard glare. The law gives judges discretion for a reason, Gerald. A little scare, a little fine, maybe some community service. That'll teach her to stay in her lane. No serious harm done. Gerald swallowed hard and nodded. Later that evening, at a lavish fundraiser dinner attended by school board members and business leaders, Judge Whitman sipped his wine leisurely. I worry, he said smoothly to the school superintendent, about teachers engaging in politics instead of focusing on education. That Claire Bennett situation. Troubling, isn't it? The superintendent, well aware of Whitman's influence over district funding, nodded nervously. I'll look into it right away. The trap was now perfectly set. Claire Bennett would not just face a fabricated legal charge. She would also feel professional pressure squeezing her from all sides. At Riverside High the following week, the faculty meeting had just ended when Principal Adams motioned for Claire to stay behind. He looked uncomfortable, removing his glasses and rubbing his temples. Claire, he said carefully, I got a call from the superintendent. Apparently, you're facing some kind of legal trouble? Claire's brows knitted in confusion. Legal trouble? You mean the traffic ticket? I paid that online weeks ago. Well, according to the superintendent, there's now a failure to appear charge and contempt of court. Judge Whitman himself raised concerns about your conduct. He slid a folded piece of paper across the desk. Claire unfolded it, reading the formal letter from the court. Her stomach dropped. This doesn't make sense, she said, voice tight. I have the payment confirmation right here. Principal Adams' expression was sympathetic but resigned. I don't want to pressure you, Claire, but if this escalates, the district may have to review your contract. Claire left the office feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath her. This wasn't about a ticket. This was revenge for speaking up at the town hall meeting, and Judge Whitman intended to crush her quietly. That night, Claire sat at her kitchen table, papers strewn everywhere. She retrieved an old dusty box from her closet, her grandfather's case files and legal notes. Then she opened her laptop and began researching. One name kept appearing: Harold Whitman. Case after case, article after article, a pattern emerged. Rulings consistently favoring wealthy developers, local elites, and business interests. Complaints filed against him over the years had mysteriously gone nowhere. Claire's phone buzzed. It was Monica from school. Claire, something's weird. Principal Adams is asking other teachers if you've ever discussed politics in class. What's going on? Claire pressed her hand against her forehead, feeling the pressure mount. Whitman's turning up the heat, she murmured. But as the fear coursed through her, something else rose to the surface. A familiar, long-buried clarity. The sharp, focused mind of a legal scholar who once dreamed of defending the innocent. Judge Whitman thought he was intimidating a meek literature teacher. He had no idea he had awakened a fighter. Claire straightened her shoulders and opened her grandfather's battered copy of Judicial Ethics and Misconduct. Two can play this game, she whispered. That night, Claire made 3 critical phone calls. First, to an old law school friend now working at the State Bar Association. Second, to one of her former students who had become an investigative journalist. Third, to the municipal court clerk's office, leaving a formal notice. She would be representing herself at the upcoming hearing. The following morning, Claire taught her literature class as if nothing was wrong. Principal Adams sat stiffly in the back row, pretending to observe her lesson while scribbling notes furiously. Claire smiled inwardly. During a discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird, she asked her students, "What is courage?" Hands shot up, and Claire's voice remained steady. It's standing up for what's right, even when everyone tells you to sit down. When the bell rang, Principal Adams approached her desk. "Claire," he said cautiously, "about this court situation, maybe it would be wise to just apologize. Make it all go away." Claire smiled politely. "I appreciate the advice, Principal Adams, but integrity is part of what I teach, not just literature." He left looking visibly unsettled. Claire quietly slipped a small digital recorder into her purse. Every move now had to be documented. The next 2 days were a blur. Claire took a personal day, spending it buried deep in the dusty halls of the county law library. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Pennington, watched with curiosity as Claire pulled statute books from high shelves. "Not many people research like that anymore," Mrs. Pennington commented, helping Claire locate a book on contempt proceedings. "My grandfather always said," Claire replied with a small smile, "that true legal knowledge is found in books, not search engines." The librarian peered at her over her glasses. "You're not a practicing attorney, are you?" "No," Claire answered honestly. "Just a teacher with a background that's become very relevant." Later at the Public Records Office, Claire requested transcripts from Judge Whitman's past contempt cases. The clerk eyed her suspiciously. "Those are pretty specific requests for someone representing themselves," he said. "I believe in being thorough," Claire replied coolly. That evening at home, Claire spread out her evidence. A detailed timeline of her citation, online payment confirmation, and sudden required appearance status change. Notes connecting the timing of her criticism at the town hall with the fabricated charges. A list of other individuals Judge Whitman had targeted after public disagreements. Her former student, David Tran, now a reporter for the local paper, texted, "Claire, you were right. Since Whitman took the bench, contempt charges are up 400%, mostly against critics. I'm emailing you a list of names." Claire responded immediately, "Can you verify witnesses willing to testify if needed?" "Already working on it. But be careful. Whitman's tied to half the city council." As she organized her legal pads, Claire glanced at a framed photo of her grandfather, smiling from the bookshelf. "What would you do, Grandpa?" she whispered. The answer was already there. Fight. With preparation. With truth. That night, Claire selected her outfit carefully. Not a sharp suit that would scream, "lawyer." No, she chose a simple navy sweater over charcoal slacks. Professional but disarming. Her best weapon was still underestimation. She practiced her arguments in the mirror. Respectful, calm, never letting Whitman bait her into emotion. Her tone would be firm but deferential, her language legal but not ostentatiously so. Between two legal pads, Claire tucked a sealed envelope, containing evidence she hoped she wouldn't need unless forced. As her grandfather always said, "The best weapon in a courtroom is being better prepared than anyone expects." When she finally lay down to sleep, Claire felt a deep, surprising calm. Tomorrow wouldn't just be about clearing her name. It would be about confronting a system that had long silenced voices like hers, and she would not be silenced. The morning of the hearing, the municipal courthouse buzzed with the usual tension. Lawyers shuffling papers, clerks calling out case numbers, anxious defendants wringing their hands. Claire sat quietly in the back row, her grandfather's battered leather briefcase resting on her lap. She observed carefully as Judge Whitman handled other cases. His pattern was clear: brusque with defendants, courteous to prosecutors, dismissive of self-represented individuals. He interrupted defendants before they could fully speak and rendered rulings with barely concealed impatience. Claire's sharp eyes noticed something else. Gerald, the court clerk who had modified her summons, avoided eye contact with almost everyone. Finally, Gerald called, "Case 47B, Bennett, Claire. Charges: failure to appear and contempt of court." Claire rose smoothly and approached the defendant's table. She placed her briefcase down, her posture calm, her expression steady. Judge Whitman barely glanced up from the file. "Ms. Bennett," he said in a tone dripping with condescension, "you are charged with failing to appear for a court hearing regarding traffic violation TR204893 and subsequent contempt. How do you plead?" Claire spoke clearly, her voice unwavering. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I believe there has been a misunderstanding, which I would like to clarify." Whitman leaned back, an eyebrow arching with smug expectation. "The facts seem clear. You were notified to appear on October 15th. You failed to do so, hence today's proceedings." "With respect, Your Honor," Claire replied, "I never received any notification to appear. I received a citation on October 1st, paid the fine online on October 3rd, and I have the payment confirmation here." She slid a neatly printed document across the table to Gerald, who hesitated before handing it to the judge. Whitman barely glanced at it. "Payment does not excuse appearance when required, Ms. Bennett. The citation clearly indicated a mandatory court date." "With respect again, Your Honor." Claire said politely, producing the original citation. There is no court date indicated anywhere, nor did the online portal require appearance after payment. For the first time, a flicker of irritation crossed Whitman's face. Perhaps in your English classes, you're used to having the final word, Ms. Bennett. In my courtroom, I determine procedure. Claire remained composed. I understand, Your Honor. However, procedural due process requires actual notice before contempt can be established. May I request to see proof that such notice was provided? Whitman's jaw tensed. He turned sharply to Gerald. Produce the standard notification record. Gerald fumbled through a folder and pulled out a generic form. Claire reviewed it carefully. Your Honor, she said, this form is dated October 10th, but it lacks any signature from a process server, no certified mail receipt, and no evidence of actual delivery. Murmurs spread quietly through the courtroom gallery. Whitman's voice sharpened. Are you suggesting the court fabricated records, Miss Bennett? Claire kept her tone even. Not at all, Your Honor. I'm merely noting that per Municipal Court Rule 7.3, actual service is required to sustain a contempt charge based on failure to appear. Whitman's eyes flashed. His patience was visibly thinning. This court's records are sufficient, he barked. Your amateur legal analysis only compounds your contempt. Several attorneys in the gallery exchanged glances. Claire responded coolly. With respect, Your Honor, procedural defects in notification directly impact due process rights. Whitman leaned forward, voice low and threatening. You clearly have a problem with authority, Ms. Bennett, just as you demonstrated at that town hall meeting. There it was, the slip Claire had anticipated. Across the courtroom, David Tran, the young reporter, scribbled furiously in his notebook. Claire seized the moment. I wasn't aware that exercising my right to free speech in a public forum was relevant to a traffic violation, Your Honor, she said. The judge's face turned a shade darker. Enough, Whitman snapped, pounding his gavel. This court finds you guilty of contempt. You are fined $2,000 and sentenced to 40 hours of community service. He prepared to move on, but Claire stood firm. Your Honor, I respectfully move for your recusal. The entire courtroom froze. Whitman glared at her. This matter is concluded, Ms. Bennett. Claire's voice was steady but insistent. A motion for judicial recusal is always timely, Your Honor, under Judicial Conduct Rule 2.11. Whitman's face tightened. And on what ground? He demanded. Claire opened her briefcase, withdrawing a neatly organized folder. Standing straight, hands lightly resting on her grandfather's worn briefcase, Claire's voice carried through the silent courtroom. Your Honor, I move for your recusal based on 3 grounds. She opened the first folder calmly. First, there is a clear appearance of bias. Your Honor directly connected these contempt proceedings to my constitutionally protected speech at a town hall meeting. The courtroom buzzed with whispered reactions. Several lawyers began scribbling notes furiously. Whitman's jaw tightened visibly. Second, Claire continued, flipping a page to reveal printed documentation. There are significant procedural irregularities. My citation was marked paid and resolved on October 3rd. Yet after the town hall meeting on October 8th, it was manually changed to appearance required, without notifying me. She turned to face the gallery slightly, making sure her words carried. Public records requests show that mine is the only citation in the past year to have its status changed after payment was processed. More murmurs rippled across the room. The court reporter's fingers clicked urgently on the stenotype machine. Whitman's gavel slammed onto the bench. Enough, he barked, voice cracking slightly. Claire stood undeterred. Third, she said, pulling out the sealed envelope, Judicial Canon 2.2 prohibits judges from allowing personal, political, or financial relationships to influence their conduct. I have documented evidence of a pattern where individuals who publicly disagreed with your rulings later faced unusual legal penalties. She paused. Including testimony from 3 witnesses ready to come forward under oath. Whitman's face drained of color. In the back of the courtroom, David Tran had stopped writing altogether, watching, eyes wide. Whitman leaned forward, his voice low and strained. Where did you acquire this legal knowledge, Ms. Bennett? Claire offered a calm, polite smile. Before I became a teacher, I graduated summa cum laude from Carson State Law School, Your Honor. Though I chose not to practice, my grandfather always taught me, knowledge of the law is every citizen's best protection against its abuse. She placed the last document neatly on the defendant's table. I respectfully request that the record reflect submission of evidence showing procedural irregularities, a formal motion for judicial recusal, and, if denied, I intend to file immediate appeal under the collateral order doctrine as established in Hampton versus County Court. The silence was deafening. Judge Whitman's hands trembled slightly on the bench. He stared at Claire for a long, heavy moment, realizing fully that what he thought would be a simple show of authority had exploded into a legal and public relations disaster. Court will recess for 15 minutes, Whitman announced tightly, banging his gavel before retreating to chambers. Behind closed doors, Whitman's demeanor shifted entirely. "What exactly do you want, Ms. Bennett?" he demanded in a hushed, furious tone. Claire stood steady. "Justice, Your Honor. Dismissal of these fabricated charges. Notation of dismissal with prejudice. And your formal recusal from any case involving myself or Riverside High." Whitman's teeth ground audibly. Claire calmly placed a second document on the table. A list of 7 other cases showing troubling patterns. Whitman's fingers twitched at the sight. 15 minutes later, the judge returned to the bench, his face set in grim lines. "In the interest of judicial propriety and to avoid any appearance of impropriety," he said stiffly, "this court dismisses all charges against Ms. Bennett with prejudice. Furthermore, I recuse myself from any future matters involving Ms. Bennett or Riverside High School." Gasps and murmurs filled the courtroom. Claire bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed. David Tran approached first, notebook in hand. "Ms. Bennett, would you care to comment?" Claire smiled slightly. "The justice system works best when everyone, citizens and judges alike, remember that rights are not privileges and that integrity matters." 2 weeks later, Claire sat in her classroom discussing To Kill a Mockingbird once more. The classroom door creaked open. Principal Adams and Superintendent Walker entered quietly. After class ended, they approached her desk. Principal Adams spoke first, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Claire, I owe you an apology. I should have stood by you from the beginning." Claire offered a gracious smile. "It's all right. It wasn't an easy position to be in." The superintendent stepped forward, looking genuinely contrite. "We also wanted to let you know, Judge Whitman has taken a leave of absence, and the school funding has been restored." Claire's heart swelled, but she kept her expression composed. That evening at home, she found a package waiting at her door. Inside was a framed photograph, a restored image of her grandfather's old law school days, with a handwritten note from her students. "Thank you for teaching us that standing up for what's right matters." Claire smiled warmly, running her fingers over the old photo. Maybe, just maybe, teaching literature was its own form of justice after all. Values learned from the story. The power of knowledge. Knowledge, especially understanding the law and one's rights, is the most powerful weapon to protect oneself against injustice. Perseverance and courage. In the face of abusive power, even when standing alone and under pressure, Claire Bennett did not back down, but stood firm with logic and truth. The importance of thorough preparation. Victory wasn't won through impulsive emotions, but through careful research, strong arguments, and smart strategies. Kindness and integrity. Even while confronting corruption, Claire maintained respect for legal processes, proving that true strength doesn't need to be loud or aggressive. Positive influence on the community. One person's courageous and principled stand can inspire change across a system and help restore justice for an entire community. Life lesson from the story. Never underestimate the power of knowledge and integrity. Even as an ordinary person with education, preparation, and the courage to stand for what is right, you can challenge and defeat even the most powerful figures when they act unjustly. This story reminds us that justice doesn't happen by itself. It requires people like Claire to stand up and defend it. And courage always begins with one individual, with us.